writing a complex character in a story or series is something that is quite risky for a writer to do, because if you do it right and everything goes right, the character will be a masterpiece, something that most people will do YouTube videos and write essays about. However, if you make mistakes, like for example, miscommunicating the concept, or worst of all, once someone puts the pieces together, they don't like the concept at all, the story is worse off for it. And so I do admire Sandrovich and Darrow for taking the risk with the character of Wu-hei, because I think that Wu-hei is probably one of the most complex characters in the entire story of Kengan Omega, which would be quite confusing for most people listening in on this video, because currently there are 268 chapters in the manga as of the recording of this video, and we have not even seen Wu-hei's face. In fact, we're limited to the beginning of a chapter. At least that's what most people would think, because in this video I'm going to prove that this is actually not the case, and it all really starts with the death of Edward Wu, which is a spicy topic in the Kengan community, mainly because no one had expected that not only would Edward be defeated, but he would be outright killed at the end of the Kengan vs. Purgatory arc. A character that felt like a final boss, a character that seemed like he was gonna win and we were gonna have to come back and fight him in another arc. A character that people saw so much potential in was just killed off just like that. And to make it worse, he is then replaced by his own clone, Gilbert, which is an incredibly bold, if not bad, decision. Either way, we need to ask ourselves the simple question: why would Sandrovich and Darrow even do something like that? And to answer that question, we will have to look at the Wu clan as a whole for the answer. Specifically, how each clan has operated till this point, because this is very important for not only the death of Edward Wu, but the character of Wu-hei. The Kure clan, which is one of the first Wu clans that we are introduced to in the story, is a clan that basically does human breeding, meaning that the way that they have grown their strength, or way they seek to find greater strength, is with partnering up with the strongest people that they can find, having children with them, and incorporating that into their clan. The same would go for fighting techniques, but they're very interested in getting married to or being partners with the people that they see are strong for the sake of moving the clan forward. Assumably, the Wu clan also do this as well, but the Westward faction is a little different. The Westward faction practice what is known as the Hushuang technique, and this technique allows a user to transfer their memories to someone else in order to basically live within them. It is another way of basically achieving immortality, even though it is definitely an imperfect method that even Shen Wulong thinks cannot fully transfer over the soul or consciousness. However, the Westwood faction have been practicing this, passing on the memories of Wu-hei through their generations, and also taking advantage of the scientific advancements of the Worm faction. The best way this is seen is Edward and his clones. Solomen, Fabio, Ellen, and Gilbert are all technically the same person, which brings us to the most important piece of information, and that is that there is one thing that all of them have in common, and I mean Ellen, Solomen, Fabio, and Edward. All of them do not have a flashback or backstory of their own, and that is a very big detail, because even Tarashi in his fight against Okubo had his own little flashback. Fei Wangfang had his own flashback. Zai Ji had his own flashback. These flashbacks are supposed to reflect the character that is having them. But for these characters, we don't really get anything, is what I would say. Because we actually do have a flashback for all of these characters. And it is the beginning of the fight between Ryan and Ellen. And that is Wu Hei's flashback. And if everything that I've said before this point remains true, then the reason why Ellen had a Wu Hei flashback instead of a flashback of his own, it is because he is technically Wu Hei. And the same would go for Solomen, Fabio, and Edward Wu, which also explains another phenomenon that we have been seeing with Gilbert, and it is the fact that as the story has been going on, he has been looking more and more like Edward. However, if I'm right about every single step before this point, then Gilbert isn't looking more and more like Edward, he's looking more and more like Wu Hei. In fact, after the death of William, Gilbert looked almost the same as Edward Wu. But this is after he had said that he was going for Wu Hei's title as God of the Underworld, which makes things even more interesting because Gilbert has been stated to have a technique called rejuvenation. It's a technique he used against his uncle, but we haven't actually seen it being used before. If we take this concept of Wu Hei being this person that the Westwood faction refuses to let die, and Gilbert is the personification of that idea, then rejuvenation is more than likely some form of healing factor that will make beating Gilbert or killing him almost impossible. Gilbert Wu or Wu Hei will be the personification of everything the Westwood faction actually wants. They will achieve their goal much like how the Kure clan achieved their goal with Kure Ryan. And that is it. That's the video. That's the analysis or theory. If you like the video, don't forget to like and sub. And until next time, take it easy.